Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here. I pulled out my color pencils, got my Prismacolors, and I've already chosen my color. We are just going to have fun coloring an image. So I dug through my stash, and I found this beautiful rose from Penny Black. I'm sure there's a video using this before, but I absolutely love these stamps by Penny Black. Also, mainly because they are great if you are learning watercoloring or colored pencils or even alcohol markers. These stamp sets are great because they have the shadows built in, so it will actually show you where your darkest colors would go throughout this stamp set, where you'll put your darkest colors just so that this image can stand out. And that's why I love them, because again, all of these little hash marks and dots and so forth just help you to where you want to put the color. Now again, I don't do a light source or anything else. This will help me do that, but I don't worry about it. And honestly, I don't think about it. I just don't. I hate to basically say that, but here, as always, I make my color card based on the colors that I'm going to use. So these are going to be my greens. So my indigo blue is going to be my darkest shade. And for my roses, I am going to make them red roses. You can see my darkest shade is actually going to be a dark purple. That's going to be down into these crevices. I also have sepia here, which will go into my greens. And then I'm actually going to use espresso to go around the outside of my image once my image is colored. The paper that I'm going to use, as always, is my Strathmore. This one's going to be my toned tan, and it's the mixed media. They do have just a toned tan and gray in regular paper for colored pencils. I do like the mixed media. It's got a little bit more of a tooth, and hear that? It's a lot thicker. I don't have to back it onto another piece of cardstock if I use the other. And this here is 184 pounds. So it's an awesome weight. So I always either grab the toned tan, the toned gray, or the toned blue in the mixed media. So very happy with that. So what I'm going to do, usually as always with these, I am going to stamp my image. I've cut this piece to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm going to put it in my stamp positioning tool here. And I am going to use my ink on 3 fade out. And I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm actually going to put this right in the center. I wonder if I want it to be straight or on an angle. I think you guys know me. I always do things on an angle. So I think I'm just going to push that up just a little bit. I already have my sentiment stamped. Here I am making a Mother's Day card. I make one every year for my mom. Even though she has passed, I still make her a card. And for me, I think it is my way to still talk with her. You know, to say hi and let her know that I'm thinking about her. Matter of fact, and I think because that's going to be like that, yeah, I actually want that to go right straight. So since it is a rubber stamp, I did remove the foam from my stamp positioning tool. And I'm just going to stamp this a couple times with my ink on 3 fade out ink. I want to make sure that I have a good impression. And I think I have a fuzzy on my stamp. Maybe not. And if that is with the fade out ink, it'll fade out, right? Right. And just one more time. Perfect. Okay, now as always, I'm going to switch over to a voiceover, but I will zoom in so that you can see the color, and I will be gabby through it. So I will show you all the color as always. And again, I'm going to be using my Prismacolors, and very little white. I'm not quite sure how much white I will actually use. I may use some for a highlight. So I'll just grab one of my Prismacolors, Prismacolor whites, just to make sure that I have that. Okay, let's go over to a voiceover. Okay, so now we are on the voiceover. So I really did speed this up. And again, just to give you some tips and tricks. So this piece, to color this, literally took me close to 3 hours. There was a time where I walked away for about 20 minutes to literally take a break from it. And I'll explain why. So let me first say I'm going to be doing all of the greenery. I used my ink on 3, like you saw in my stamp positioner, to stamp this. Ink on 3 is the ink that I have gotten very used to when it comes to my no line coloring. It doesn't mean I still will not use, these inks are just as good as ink on 3, is the Simon Says Fog and the Simon Says Barely Beige, and then some of the Gina K's that I use as well. So for this one, I'm trying something when it comes to a colored pencil image that I find very tough, or it's a challenge. Okay, nothing's tough. It's just a challenge. And if we keep practicing, we will overcome that challenge, no matter what it is that you're trying. You just need to decide, okay, is it something that I want to keep on trying because this is something that I really like? Or you know what? It may not just have your interest. And I found that with some things as well. So for this image, yeah, there's going to be a lot of rambling going on here. So for this image, I'm starting with the greenery, and the color pencils that I'm using are my Prismacolors. And I'm using, for the lightest line peel, the next level is moss green, the dark level is kelp green, and then the extreme depth that I'm using is indigo blue. I was thinking about using either a sepia, a brown, to keep that tone earthy, okay? But I went with the blue, because you'll see once we start the petals. You can see for my leaves, I'm putting down the lighter color first. At least that's what I was doing until I hit this leaf. Kind of went up into the other one and then went down to the other one. So I'm starting... You can see I can go either way. I can either put my lightest color down and then come in with the darkest and then go back to the medium and then go back to the light. In this case, I started with the darkest of the green. The blue shade that I'm using for my greenery is pulling back in the cool color. The greens that I chose are on the warm side. Okay, kelp green, though, is close to a cool side. I wasn't quite sure with that one, but I figured it was on the warm side. It went with it. So, meaning it's got a warm tone underneath it. It doesn't have a more of a blue tone. So by pulling the blue in on my leaves as the ultimate darkest color, that kind of cools it down. When it comes to the rose, you're going to see that, yes, I have warm shades for 2 of my reds, but then for the darkest red, and then finally the purple, it's on the cool side. So that's kind of why I'm using those dark tones as cool. Again, this is how I use colored pencils. This is how I, if somebody wants to say rationalize through them, or how I choose my colors to pull it all together. I look at each of them as a totality. And I do feel that we can mix and match our colors. And we can do that more so with our colored pencils. So you can see how this lighter color I'm not using a white. I'm not using my blender. I'm actually using the lightest shade when it comes to my greens to blend out all of these colors for this card. And you can do that. I want to keep those the main colors of this. When I see this image, to me, it is a very traditional and elegant image. So I want to keep it to its true colors, if that makes sense. So here's where we go with the red. Now, those leaves alone, okay, when it came to doing those leaves alone took 45 minutes. I like to let you know what the time is. I don't rush when I use my colored pencils. Sometimes I can. It all depends on the image. This image was challenging, and here's what the challenging part was for me. The reds. If you've noticed, if you've looked back on all of the times that I used a colored pencil, and it's usually a floral. I love to use my colored pencils, especially on florals. You will see I do not believe I have ever used red tones in any of my colors. When I did roses recently for the Paint a Flower series with Altenew, it was roses for the second one that I did. I did them in yellow. Now, don't get me wrong. I love yellow roses. I love all colors in roses. But there is just something about a red rose. Coloring it, there's just something about that, too, with me. Very challenging for me. So this is actually the first time that I'm doing that. So I was really cautious, really taking my time. What I also found right about here, while you can really see the images, the 2 roses, for me, those images were getting tougher and tougher to see. Probably because my eyes are failing me. But, yeah, let's go with it. But it was actually, this ink was actually fading. It was doing what it was supposed to do. So I came in with the lightest shade of my reds, which is permanent red. And I'm just doing the outline. And there's times where I'm, as I'm watching this, I'm saying, okay, yeah, that wasn't right. So I'm creating my own petals, which is fine. You can absolutely do that. And it'll be absolutely beautiful. So I'm just getting an outline so I can have a sense of how these what I wanted to say was petals are overlapping themselves. And I just wanted that defined really quick. So lots of different ways I did these petals. Because again, there's different ways that I'll work with the colored pencils and get the same results. So for some petals, I put down the lightest color all over, then I go back in with the darkest. Now when I go back in with the darkest, it's the darkest red. It's Crimson Lake. I don't come in with the purple until after my colors are down. So you can see I'm putting, for these petals here, I'm putting down the lightest color. Then I'm coming in with the darkest. I'm mapping out how this petal's going to look and how it's going to get highlighted and where it's going to get highlighted. Then once I have those 3 reds down, then I'm coming back in with dark purple. It's literally called dark purple, to get it more defined, to get the bends going on in that petal to make it look realistic. The same thing that I did with the leaves is what I'm doing with the red petals. I'm not using a white to highlight. You're going to see me pull in the white, but very sketchy across the image. It is not going to be using the white to blend out the colors. It's literally going to be a highlight, and you will see that. Again, I do keep all the coloring in, but again, if I kept this real time, that would, again, 3 hours with a, not 20 minute, I'm sorry, I believe I said 20 minutes, with a 30 to a 45-minute break. So roughly about 2.5 hours, I think this actually took me. But again, I turned on my music, or I have my TV going in the background, and I always have DVDs going. This time it's Psych. Love Psych. I miss that show. And I just get lost in it. It's very easy. So you can see how these petals are just coming up. Once I come in with that lightest color, I add pressure to my pencil to get a solid colored image. And when I do that, I touch the tip of where the dark is, because I want to be able to add more purple. You can see I'm starting to switch. So for the larger petals, I'm putting the lightest color down, then going back in with the darkest red. Now you can see I'm actually starting to outline with the darker purple, or the dark purple, then coming in with the dark red, then coming in with the next one, and I'm fanning it out as I get closer and closer to the center of the center of the rose. You can see I'm also adding more of the dark purple. As I keep bringing my head back to see this, I'm adding more and more definition to the lines, to break up those petals, to give them that definition. For me, you don't always have to do the blends out. Just by putting a line in there and blending that out between the two will give you the petal definition as well. Okay, you're going to see me sharpening pencils a lot in here. I do like to have a point when it comes to my pencils. I don't like to let them wear down. It all depends on what I'm doing. Now, sometimes if I'm coloring in a big area, yeah, I will let them run down. But as I'm adding all of these blends and everything, I do like to have a sharp point. So that was our first rose. Now I will have a slowed down so that you can see that. So you can see here, that's where I got comfortable. When I start to go directly to a dark color, to put that in the definition and then pull the colors out, I'm getting more comfortable with it. I don't feel I have to build. You're going to see this flower goes a little quicker. Because I'm starting right off the bat with the dark color. Then I'm coming in with the darkest red. Then I'm coming in with the medium red. And then I'm coming in with that lightest red. Just to blend all of them out. Then I'm going back in with the darkest. So you can see now I'm just coming in with the dark colors. I'm putting in where these shadows are going to be. Where the lines need to be. How the dark and how much dark should come out, because the further back the petals are, I want them to be darkest. They need the most shading. I want to make sure that each of the petals has the fold. You know, rose petals have these folds that just come as they bloom out, as it opens. They just get these folds in the center of them, and it's beautiful when it comes to how a rose just opens itself up. It starts out as a bud, and then it just continues to be beautiful as she continues to open. So again, red's very challenging for me, but I will say, after doing this, I'm more comfortable than what I was. I was about to say very. Nah, I'll never say very. I'm sure there's going to be something else that will give me a challenge to it. But I really did enjoy doing this card. So I hope I did give you some, as I said before, some tips and tricks when it comes to this. Now, again, the paper that I am using is my toned tan. I wanted this image to just pop off the page. I could have used the tone gray as well, but for me, what that would have done was pushed it back. It wouldn't be as close up to the front. Instead of using a gray to go around my image, around the back, I did use espresso. And here's where I'm coming in with the white. You can see a very light hand, and I am just going on the tips of the leaves and the edges of those petals. You can see how far back my hand is on this pencil. That will give you the lightest pressure. The closer your hand goes to the pencil tip, the more pressure you're likely to apply. So you can see I'm just going around, I'm filling in the centers. And for me, what this does is it just helps to pull that image up off of the page. I do not like to have a harsh line around it, just the shadow. So I hope you enjoyed the coloring. Now, let's go back to the live part. Okay, so I apologize for, first not realizing that the phone was not on. But we finally got it to that. And then just having to move some things around there. Sometimes I just get lost. When I'm doing this, I forget all of the other things that are going around, like make sure the camera's on. So here is our card. You can see that you have the beautiful red roses, of course. I used a dark red border around that matched actually the shading that goes in, that's down into the rose. I have my sentiment going across the bottom, and again, it is from the Clearly Besotted pack, and that's right there. And this pack is called All Occasion Sentiments. So this is great. It has a sentiment for every celebration or holiday. And then I just added, since I used a black strip for the sentiment, I actually used my black Nouveau drops just to add some accents, just to pull that black going across. So I do hope you enjoyed this. I hope I gave you some tips and tricks on how I use colored pencils, and how I can determine the shadow and how I just make that come together using what I have. All the products that I used will be listed down below as always, and if you have any questions, please leave those down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I will answer when you have questions. It might just take me a little bit of time due to my schedules and everything else, but I do promise I will get back to you. I thank everybody for taking the time to watch this video, and just for being here. I truly am grateful, and as I said, I do hope you enjoy the videos and continue to enjoy the videos. I hope everyone is enjoying their day. Please continue to stay safe and healthy. But for me, what's most important and what's helping me is I am always being creative to Until next time, guys.